Good morning, afternoon or evening. This is Red Pill Memes to slap you out of the Matrix, the series encouraging independent thought and critical analysis on the world we see around us. If you like the content, please remember to like and subscribe. Let's go. Alright, woke victimhood is dangerous. Konstantin Kisin.
Their victims is so incredibly damaging and so incredibly dangerous. They did an experiment with a group of women and they put scars on their faces and they told these women that they're going into a job interview and the purpose of the experiment is to find out whether people with facial disfigurements face discrimination. They showed them the scars in the mirror and as they led them out of the room, they said, we're just going to touch it up a little bit. And as they touched it up, they removed the scarring completely.
Wow.
So the women went into the job interview thinking that they are scarred, but actually being their normal selves. And the result of the experiment is that those women then came back reporting massively increased level of discrimination. Many of them came back with comments that the interviewer had made that they felt were referencing their facial disfigurements. And this is why I think this ideology of victimhood is so dangerous, because if you preach to people constantly that we're all oppressed, then that primes people to look for that.
If you see yourself as a victim,
you're a victim.
You will look for any excuse, any possible avenue, any slight detail that could possibly be interpreted as discrimination. That's what you will interpret it as, because you are looking for it. And if you look for it, the perception you went into the situation with, you will find it, even if it's not actually there. Oh, Rishi Sunak. British PM and WEF 2030 agenda devotee Sunak invested $500 million of his private funds into Moderna through a company called Thelema Partners in a notorious tax haven in the Cayman Islands. Afterwards, he stated in Parliament that the vaccine was safe and effective, while then going on to roll out further permissions for Moderna to set up further vaccine-producing interests within the UK.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
How can you be allowed to make decisions that benefit your own personal investments? 500 million. I don't know how much money Sunak has, but 500 million. That's a massive bet to make. So he clearly had information beforehand that this was going to roll out, that this was going to be a definite thing.
I ask you that you open your minds and listen to what the professionals, the experts here have to say, and to let you know that it is based on science and research.
In fact, the very specific pandemic using coronavirus began in a very different time. Coronavirus was identified in 1965 as one of the first infectious, replicatable.
Did you just say 1965?
Viral models that could be used to modify a series of other experiences of the human condition. It was isolated once upon a time associated with the common cold. But what's particularly interesting about its isolation in 1965 was that it was immediately identified as a pathogen that could be used and modified for a whole host of reasons. And you heard me correctly, that was 1965. And by the way, these slides are public domain. You're welcome to look at every single reference. Every comment that I made is based on published material. So do make sure that you look at those references.
1965.
Well, it hurts, doesn't it?
And we were told this came suddenly out of nowhere. Yet again, the climate crisis, different colour schemes, even lower temperatures, and yet, it's got to be a joke at this point. Come on, it's got to be a joke. How could they all just comply? We would never do that. They must have been brainwashed. Well. It's for your safety. Arrests for social media posts. Russia 411. The UK 3,300.
Are we the baddies?
And we live in a society of free speech.
I need to make this video about electric cars. For everybody that thinks they're helping the environment, for everybody that thinks they're doing the right thing, for everybody that thinks that electric cars are the way of the future, why are they being pushed, and why is this complete BS? First of all, they're being pushed because they're going to use regulations eventually to ban anything that isn't an electric car. That way, the vast majority of you who couldn't afford to get a new car, an electric car, are now no longer drivers. Number one. Number two, they can shut those things down at any time or even have them programmed to drive themselves, to repossess themselves, etc. Number three, this is why it is complete hogwash about this so-called green energy movement. So everybody already knows the lithium and cobalt they need for the batteries cause way more harm to the environment and cost so much energy just to extract from the ground. We also know that the batteries only last a very short period of time, usually around 5 years, and then they need to be disposed of as toxic waste and replaced. But this is the best part. When you people plug in your electric vehicles, where do you think that energy comes from that now has to be converted to electricity and then converted to power again by your electric vehicle? What's the largest power source in the world today? It's coal. So your electric car is really being powered by coal. And if you're in a rural area where they don't even have power, what are those electric charging stations? They're giant diesel generators with plugs. So your electric car not only is destroying the environment to get produced, destroying the environment because it causes toxic waste when it has to get rid of the batteries, but it's not really electric and powered by electricity. The massive amount of electricity in the world is powered by coal or a diesel generator. So how are you green? How are you helping the environment? How are you doing anything except patting yourself on the back for something you don't even understand? And now you do, so you probably feel like a complete fool.
Oh my days, he's hit the nail on the head absolutely perfectly. And then you've got the fact that these electric cars can be tracked everywhere. They can drive themselves. They can drive you to the police station if you've got an outstanding parking ticket and just rat you up. Got snaked on by your own car, bruv. What the? It's just another way for the higher ups to gain complete control over you and manipulate people into doing it by making them think it's the good moral thing. At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal rapid-acting diseases and starvation. Energy, food and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, then spreading to other races. The population of Canada, Western Europe and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on other continents, until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million will consist of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question. Damn, I don't know where this extract has come from, which book this is, but Jesus. If this is true, mate, I reached the profile of the #1 target of these lot. Smoke, painting, mining, pesticides, radioactive, the deadliest virus in history.
I've contained my rage for as long as possible.
I don't even know what to say anymore. There's just so many holes to poke in this agenda that I don't even know where to start. If you allow the government to break the law for an emergency, they will create emergencies to break the law. I've also seen it using a different terminology. If you give the governments emergency powers, they will create emergencies to gain more power.
You are a former Vice President of Pfizer. Could you just tell us very briefly about your position there?
So I was, until 2011, for many years, I was responsible for worldwide research and early developments in their field of respiratory and allergy new medicines. That was it. 200 people indirectly across a couple of sites.
So that gave you a real insight into what was happening in early 2020.
There's not very many corners of this industry I've not had some knowledge of. And when I started noticing former colleagues of mine, including Sir Patrick Vallance, saying things on the television I knew weren't true and that I knew he knew weren't true, that's when the penny dropped for me, probably February 2020. I remember saying to my wife, this is not what they're saying it is. Something's going on. And then when I saw not only my country locking down, but dozens of countries locking down at the same time, I would say to your listeners, that was proof, and it's still proof, of a supranational operation. There's no way it could have happened at the local level, at the country level. Therefore, it must have occurred at the level above. Whether it was the WHO or the World Economic Forum or other, I don't know. But I'm convinced that action alone absolutely proves unequivocally that we didn't just get some virus drifting in and then, oh, we all panicked. They all did the same stupid, ineffective, known not to work things at the same time, none of which were in their country's pandemic preparedness plans, because I've read them all, right? So when I accuse these people of lying, I do it confident they're not going to sue me, because I would say, come on, sue me. I'd love to have discovery in courts. You will lose big time.
There we go. A former vice president of Pfizer is saying that. That's not some uneducated crackpot lunatic off the internet wearing a tinfoil hat. That's an educated person who was in one of the very companies who are responsible for this. And at the time, this video wouldn't have been allowed on the internet. And this goes to show that people that weren't buying into the whole agenda, most likely it's just because they weren't listening to people that were on the BBC and CNN and what other major news networks there are. People that actually did their own independent research and listened to people of quality, of a decent level of knowledge in the field. I'm not particularly fond of people who fly in private jets to a meeting where they discuss how to take away my car and feed me bugs, but that's just me.
I just wanna tell you all, go yourself.
I'm not eating the bugs, bro. I'm fully not eating the bugs. Sorry, no children. This movie is rated R. Ah, shucks. Look what he sees when he goes outside, mate. The cognitive dissonance that goes on in this world. Violence is a massive no-no. But public nudity, completely fine. Things I'm worried about. Climate change, nowhere to be found. The emergence of a one-world totalitarian government. 100%, mate. 100% climate change.
Some members of the media use their platforms
To push their own personal bias.
and agenda to control exactly what people think. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Why? They're all reading off the same script, mate. And that's exactly the thing they're talking about. Use their platforms to push their own personal bias. If you're all getting the same script from the same person, that is using your platform to push your own personal bias.
This will blow your mind. Start by drawing 3 points in the shape of a triangle. To start us off, choose a point anywhere within this triangle. Now we'll draw more points by repeating 2 simple rules over and over. The first rule tells us to randomly select one of the original 3 points. For example, suppose we choose 3. The second rule tells us to move halfway from the point we just drew toward the selected point and draw another point. Now, we repeat the 2 rules from the point we just drew. Randomly select one of the original 3 points. Suppose we choose 1 this time. Move halfway from the point we just drew toward point number 1 and draw another point. Now we'll repeat once again. After each new point, we'll randomly select one of the original 3 points, move halfway toward it, and draw another point. The question is, what happens if we draw hundreds or even thousands of points using these 2 simple rules over and over? Well, here's what it looks like after 100 points, and here's what it looks like after 1,000 points, and finally, here's what it looks like after 25,000 points have been drawn. As if by magic, this eerie image emerges. It's known as the Sierpinski triangle, and it's a famous fractal. Amazingly, although the points are drawn in a random manner, the Sierpinski triangle will always materialize after enough points are drawn.
Yo, the Sierpinski triangle. Oh, mathematics is the language and building blocks of nature. And I guess another factor to why the whole choosing the pyramid as the logo thing, there's probably one more factor involved.
Australia is slowly shifting towards being cash-free. More than $1 billion worth of notes have disappeared from circulation in the past 12 months. It follows the Commonwealth Bank's decision to start trialling cashless branches across Sydney. Economists say a cashless society will hurt criminals on the black market, but will make life more difficult for the elderly who rely on notes and coins.
I would say gutted to be an Australian, but that's going to be everywhere soon. That's coming from all of us. They're going to say it's to prevent criminals from conducting activity. They're going to say it's for your own convenience. You know, you don't have to bother with money. Just quick tap, pay with your card, beep, done. But in reality, once they get rid of cash, once they implement CBDCs, we are all fucked. Right, I think that's enough for today. But if you like the content, you want to see more, again, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one in a bit.